Hey robot fans, welcome back to the build. As you can see, I am knee deep in getting this helmet ready for paint. I will have a video on that whole process soon. Today we're going to do something a little different. We are going to make the first custom 3D printed part for this build, which I am super excited about. I've been feeling a little out of place with all of these resin casted parts, but with 3D printing I feel right at home. Also, this video will contain my new favorite word, GREEBLIES. A greeble is defined as a fine detailing added to the surface of a larger object that makes it appear more complex and therefore more visually interesting. So this word is super interesting to me. We have the singular tense greeble, and then we have this for the plural tense, which looks like greeblies. But if this is greeble, shouldn't this be greebles? I made a post on the Clone Facebook page to see how other builders were pronouncing this word, and after a raging debate between at least 2 to 3 people, we've come to the consensus that it's GREEBLIES! So I will be using that word with gusto for the rest of this video. Here we go. GREEBLIES! Okay, so these are the GREEBLIES that came with the helmet. They are casted in resin, so I mean they're beautiful. They are perfectly detailed. They really have a high level of detail. They're really clean, but they're solid. So all you could really do is just glue them onto your helmet. They are GREEBLIES in the truest sense of the word, in that they are just pieces that get added on for detail to make it look more visually interesting. So what am I going to be doing with these? Well, I've been chatting with another builder named David. He's actually completed a Commander Bow build already. It's really well done. He's been so helpful with advice and guidance, and I've been using all of his pictures as reference. And when we were chatting about the GREEBLIES, he gave me a great idea to make them hollow so that I could drill a hole behind them and have better airflow into the helmet. So I took these GREEBLIES into 3D Studio Max and started designing a hollow one so we could take a look at that. Okay, so here's the 3D model for the GREEBLIE. It's pretty simple. It's 3 tubes put together. There's a hole going straight through. And the bottom one stretched out a little bit, and then I added this hexagon screen pattern to the top tube. I added a little bit of a curvature to that screen pattern just to keep it similar to the other one. And that's it. I'm not 100% sure how well this is going to print in one piece, so I also made another version here where I separated out the screen, and I'll print these two individually and then try to put them together. So we'll see which one of these two methods works a little bit better. Okay, so I started printing out those versions. I did the screen one first. Here is the screen. It's just a thin piece of ABS plastic, and I printed out the casing. And the goal was to try to fit this in here. Now these screens are supposed to have a little bit of a curvature to them, and replicating that with this thin screen became really hard. Just getting it placed was difficult. It fits and everything, which is good, but getting it perfectly fitted and having that little curve in the middle, I mean, it's not bad, but it's not great. And also there's little tiny gaps from where there's deviation around the rim. I didn't really like that either. So I printed out another screen which had a little bit of a cap to it, figuring that this little wall here will give it enough structure to push into the casing. And that worked pretty well too, but I ran into the same problem. We're dealing with such a small area here that even just a little bit of a deviation in the print really shows up along the edges here. There's a big gap. So I didn't like that at all. So I moved on to printing the full version here, and I printed them in 2 different materials. I printed white PLA. I did it in 3 different temperature settings, all different print settings, just trying to dial in what would be the best for this. And these black ones are printed in ABS also, just like the other ones were. So the PLA is easier to print. It's a much more agreeable material, but the honeycomb pattern here, this little hexagon screen, didn't show up so well in the PLA. I don't know why. I tried different coolings, different fan speeds, everything, and I kind of got the same result on all of them, which is just not that great. The ABS, which is a lot harder to print at such a small resolution with my printer, gave me a really nice honeycomb pattern for the screen there, that hexagon shape. So I think ultimately I'm going to do ABS, and with the originals, I was able to, when I didn't have the screen in there, I was able to lay it flat and print it like that, but I couldn't do that when it's one piece because I'll never be able to get this screen to print. So I had to print it vertically, which means I had to use supports on the bottom, which gives me a little bit of a rough edge on the bottom here. Now this is ABS, and ABS sands really nicely. It sands much easier than the PLA. And so with just a little bit of sanding and a little bit of putty at the top here, this is going to be perfectly smooth, and I'll get that nice screen pattern that we like. The top is really good. This is printed at 0.1 millimeters, so it's super high resolution. And yeah, these are going to be really nice. I can just start sanding and maybe do a little bit of putty, and we can start the finish work on these. So yeah, the finish work on these is nothing major. I went outside with some 60 grit sandpaper and I hit all the roughest spots real quick. Then I did 220 grit sandpaper over the entire thing. I sprayed it with a round of primer just to see where the high and low spots were. I filled all the low spots with putty and sanded again with 220 and then again with 320. And at that point, it's pretty much ready to paint. You can repeat those steps as many times as you need to. Prime, 220, 320, putty as many times as you need to get it perfect. And then I hit it with 2 coats of matte black Krylon spray paint and then 2 coats of satin clear coat. Once the clear coat's done, we're kind of at the home stretch. All that's left to do is paint the meshes. For that, I use a cheap little paintbrush with Tamiya Metallic Gray XF56. I do 2 coats of the metallic paint, and then if you want to, you could respray it with the satin clear coat. I choose not to because I think the different finishes between the metallic paint and the clear coat look a little nicer. But if you want to give the paint a little extra protection, you can definitely do that. At this point in the build, I had been working on cleaning up the helmet, so there's a little bit of a color change coming up, but all we have left to do now is drill the holes in the helmet for the greeblies to go on top of. So my goal here is to make the holes in the dead center of this area. So I measured everything out and made a couple markings right in the center of this area. I then used a small drill bit to drill a pilot hole and slowly built up the size of the bit. The inside hole of the greebly is 3/4 of an inch, so I'm going to make this hole 3/4 of an inch when it's all said and done. I have a 3/4 inch drill bit here. I think the area is a little too fragile to actually use this drill bit, but I'm just going to put it in there and kind of score out a little circle for me as a guide, and then I'm going to sand it out. Okay, so some progress out here. I've just been taking a 60 grit sandpaper, rolled it into a tube, and I've just been, going in and out and trying to get this hole bigger. It's going pretty well. I just have to go out to the end of these markings where I scored it with the masonry bit. Okay, I got 2 pretty good sized holes in there. The greeblies still cover it up pretty well, so I think we're all set here. That's going to do it for this video. I have the greeblies taped into place so that we can see what they're going to look like on the final build. I've printed out a ton of these, so if you need any for your build, feel free to leave a comment on this video or send me a message. As always, we're going to finish with a picture progression, so I'll see you next time. Greeblies!